Okay. Um, this is the inaugural podcast of the Enlightened Misanthrope. I'm glad you're all listening. So, my initial topic today is going to be about Josh Gordon and the Browns. Josh Gordon, for those of you who don't know, which if you're a sports fan, you've probably heard the name, was a receiver that came out of Baylor a few years ago, went in the supplemental draft because he was declared ineligible, I believe, or he had some problems in college of some sort, and went into the supplemental draft. That's usually why those guys happen, why that happens with those guys. Anyway, he went to the Browns for a few years, and he was a really good player. Like 2013, he was probably the best receiver in the league statistically. I think he only played 13 games, but he was really good. And then he had copious amounts of substance abuse problems, was suspended quite a few times, and the Browns kept him on the roster as he was suspended, supposedly standing by him, as they said. Now, recently, he was working out for a photo shoot of apparently a player line or a clothing company that he owned. He was doing it in the Browns facility, and he hurt himself. And apparently this, not the copious amounts of substance abuse suspensions that lasted years, his need for mental health care, all this other stuff that, is arguably either bad, worse, or annoying, more annoying than what happened. They cut the guy. They're like, we're done with you now. Never happening again. You're off the team. Now, can you explain this to me? Because then they come out with a statement that says, oh, well, we stood by Josh Gordon. How in the hell did you stand by Josh Gordon? He was a talent, an asset. You kept him on your roster to prevent him from being on other teams in the league. You didn't do anything other than say, what can we do? Well, we don't have to pay him. He doesn't have to have access to us. And all we do is hold his contractual rights. Well, we're obviously not going to cut him. A good example of this is a guy named Justin Blackmon. A lot of you might not remember him, but he was really good. He had like a 226-yard game for the Jaguars when like Blaine Gabbert was their quarterback, which is quite a feat in and of itself. He was a wide receiver taken in the first round, fairly high. I want to say like 7th, but I could be wrong. Could have been in the 10 to the lower teen range. And he really was a good receiver, but there was apparently he had a problem with alcohol, and this was known when he was in college already. They had people tailing him to bars and stuff. This was a story that I had either heard on ESPN or read on the internet, and he's out of the league now. He was a first-round talent. I mean, he was a really good football player. He's out of the league now. The Jaguars still technically hold his contractual rights. I think he's around my age. He might be 29. He might be a little younger than me, but he's on this team only in spirit. He's not on the team in any significant way, shape, or form. He doesn't show up on Sundays. He's not part of the community outreach. He's not part of anything. They keep him because if he comes back, he was a talented receiver, and they wanted him, right? Josh Gordon was the same thing. They spent very little to acquire him. They spent a supplemental draft pick. I think it was a 2nd or a 3rd round pick. They paid him 3rd round pick money, and they kept rolling it over. He was never going to be a free agent because he only played those couple of seasons. So now they trade him to the Patriots, and they claim, oh, well, we stood by him. This guy had substance abuse problems. And now there's a lot of people who use substance abuses, or that abuse substances, and they're hopeless. I mean, they're just hopeless because they have something that's broken inside of them, and there's really no way to fix it. And I know that's kind of a pessimistic way to look at it, but there are some people like that. Not everybody's like that. There are some people who have substance abuse problems. They have something they're not dealing with. They deal with it and they move on, and they do better. They do AA or they do NA or, Al-Anon or whatever the hell kind of self-help programs for drugs and alcohol abuse that you want. And they get better. But a lot of times, those people need structure. They need to feel, cared for. They need to feel like they have something to keep going. Why do you throw your life down the drain? Because your life's not worth very much as far as you're concerned, And also there are people, like I said, that cannot help themselves. I mean, they literally can't help themselves. So in that case, Josh Gordon they didn't stand by Josh Gordon. They just kept his contractual rights, and they threw him out the damn door. They're like, oh, you're suspended, go away. The league said you're not allowed to have contact with the team, you're not allowed to be on any team things, blah, 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 blah. You can reapply, but, until that such time that you become reinstated, get the hell away from the team. Another example of this is Alden Smith. When Jack Del Rio was the head coach of the Oakland Raiders, and I think this was last year or maybe the year before. Forgive me if I forget exact dates because I'm not looking any of this up. I'm just using my memory. I could look it up as I talk to you, but I'm afraid that you'll hear the clicking. And I'm currently very busy, and I'm not interested in doing mountains of research because some of the stuff that I remember is like from a few years ago, and to find the exact article is kind of difficult. But Alden Smith was a linebacker out of Missouri. He was taken first-round pick for the 49ers. He had significant alcohol, drug problems, stuff like that. He got suspended, kicked off of, I think he had a domestic violence incident too, something like that. And he had some kind of big deal that got him shuttled off of the 49ers. And then the Raiders signed him, and he was doing better. But he had a slip-up. Now, if any of you have any experience with anybody with substance abuse or watch anything about substance abuse or have any idea about it, you know that relapses happen. A lot of addicts relapse. Some of them don't relapse very often. Some of them don't relapse permanently, but they relapse. And in my opinion, in a relapse, one of the most important things addict needs is reassurance that, okay, you messed up, but it's going to be okay. We're going to keep moving forward. Well, he messed up and he got kicked out of the league. And he got taken away from the team. And Jack Del Rio, who was his coach at the time, said the worst thing you could have done for that kid was take him away from us. We had him on a plan. We had him structured. We had Wise watching him. We had everything you needed to have. And then once he got suspended, that all stopped instantly. There is a difference between standing by a player, which I kind of feel like Jack Del Rio did, because he came out and said, this is BS, man. This is BS. That guy was in better shape when we had him than not, and you guys took him away from us. I feel like if the Browns had truly stood by Josh Gordon, they would have went to the league and said, you know, if they really stand by these guys who have substance abuse issues, like not wife beaters or guys who like Aaron Hernandez who kill people, or you know, people who do outrageous, heinous things, but these substance abuse people who have issues that are somewhat correctable. I mean, they might not be. They might be those group of addicts that are just, you know, uncorrectable, and they're just going to be like this until they die. But in the end, you can see how if they were really standing by these people, they would have chosen to say to the league, no, we need him in our program. We need him in our system. We need these things from Josh Gordon because he's a damn good football player, and we need to have him going forward. But the leagues don't choose to do this. And the reason that they don't choose to do this is because it's cheaper, it's easier, it's less expensive, it's less time consuming, and they're not good at, you know, people development. They're good at winning football games. They're good at selling tickets. They're good at making money, and that's what they're good at. And I mean, now, am I casting a lot of, you know, negative thoughts towards the Browns? Yeah. As a franchise, they suck. Now, this is after Thursday night recently where Baker Mayfield came on and they won the first game they won in a really long time, and everybody got drunk and made a big mess in Cleveland. And maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe going forward they'll be better. But you know what really happened? I like the current edition of Hard Knocks, showing the background of the Browns, you know, the behind the scenes. John Dorsey is their new general manager. Now, many of you may not know or care who John Dorsey is, but John Dorsey used to work for the Green Bay Packers under Ted Thompson. Then he went to the Kansas City Chiefs, built a fairly good team, but he got forced out because I tend to believe, I hadn't heard this anywhere, but I just get the feeling based on who John Dorsey is, it was kind of, it came down to it's either me or Andy Reid situation, and they were like, we're going to go with Andy. And you saw in the Hard Knocks episodes that he was in, and I didn't see very many of them, but I saw him in a couple of them, and he's very ego-centered. At least this is just first blush. I don't know the man. I've never met him. I don't talk to anybody who knows him. But what I see is that he is a big guy about himself. And so because of that fact, I'm assuming he's been there less than a year, and now Josh Gordon's gone. Guys on that team that he didn't like were gone immediately. He wanted to remake this team in his image, and he did. Now, that's good. I mean, it's good for a general manager to clean out the old garbage, bring in new guys, fresh start, whole deal. But for Hugh Jackson, now he's been there longer, and he was almost gone, if you believe some of the reports that happened when John Dorsey got there. Because there was talk that John Dorsey didn't get along with him, the whole deal, and so they were going to can him. Well, that didn't happen. But now maybe Hugh Jackson stood by Josh Gordon. He might say that. And then, like I said, unless they truly went to the league and said, we need him in our program, we need to make the guy whole, we need to help him out, I don't really feel like they stood by him. But in a sense, Hugh Jackson was there in the years that they lost and Josh Gordon wasn't there. And he welcomed him back. But I don't feel the Browns did. Jimmy Haslam, doesn't stand by coupons for gas. His Pilot J company was under federal indictment, and John Dorsey was, fired and came in less than a year ago. So he's not really standing by Josh Gordon. Now, maybe you can say Jimmy Haslam. I just take a shot at him. I don't even know if that's all true. He's a guy who drafted Johnny Manziel because a damn homeless person said, I gotta draft Johnny Manziel, and the guy did it. You own a fucking football team, and you have a bunch of scouts, a general manager, an assistant general manager, a head guy of fucking football operations, and you draft Johnny Manziel because a homeless dude told you. I really hope that story isn't true, because the fact that guy has so much money and is that stupid makes my head hurt, but whatever. So, if you were truly the Browns and you were going to stand by Josh Gordon, you would bring in other programs and try to help the guy and keep him in the system. Like, you don't have to don't play him, but having him completely be exiled. I mean, imagine if you dedicated yourself to something since you were like 5 years old, or maybe a little older. I don't know how old Pee Wee is in certain places, but you're a real young kid and you play football. You love football. You love the locker room. You love your guys. You love everybody. You love the structure, And then you have a problem. You have a mental problem or, an addiction problem. And it gets all taken away from you. Everything you've known, the thing that you leaned on, the thing that got you through regardless. You loved playing football. And they just took it away from you. And now not only can you not play football anymore, you cannot have any contact with anybody that is in that organization during the football season under penalty of, like, your firstborn son gets murdered in front of you. I mean, that's the kind of thing that the NFL, that's their draconian laws that they enact now. Because I remember when Roger Goodell first came in, that was when Pac-Man Jones was doing that stuff, and they were, there was a bunch of guys running roughshod over the league, and Goodell came in with his iron fist and corrected everybody, and then proceeded to screw up the Ray Rice thing and screw up countless things since then. Now, granted, it's not all Roger Goodell's fault because he is just the mouthpiece for the league. This is the owners, like a gaggle of 32 very wealthy men who somehow got wealthy by luck because they really don't know how to run this league that well. I mean, they've made a lot of mistakes, and this is one of them, because Josh Gordon being suspended that long, what purpose does that serve? I don't know. But I'm not going to belabor the point anymore. I'm just going to say that they didn't really stand by him, and the fact that they said that really bothered me, because to stand by somebody with addiction issues and stuff like that, I mean, there comes a point where you're enabling or you're helping. And they didn't even try to help. I mean, behind the scenes, they might have done stuff. They might have tried to get him involved in programs, but the league didn't help him. And the team didn't help him by letting the league suspend him. I mean, once maybe, okay, I could see that. Twice, okay. Well, once you get to a whole season suspension, the guy obviously needs help. And more than what he's getting, right? That's how I see it. And I really hope he goes to the Patriots and it works out, because I don't like the Patriots. I hate Tom Brady. Bill Belichick, I don't like the way he interacts with the media. I think he doesn't have to be a dick on purpose. I watched that 2 Bills 30 for 30 on ESPN about him and Bill Parcells, because he came up under Bill Parcells, for those of you who don't know. And the guy actually is interesting. Like, he's very knowledgeable, but he goes in front of the media and acts like a complete ass. I mean, it's terrible. But I hope for Josh Gordon's sake that he goes out there and rips it up, because I loved watching Josh Gordon play football that year. He was on, and to be full disclosure, he was on my fantasy team, and it helped me out a lot. Now, that helps me fall in love with certain football players. I fall in love with players because I really like their potential. I really like what they do on the field. if you have a couple spectacular catches, I'll be like, what happened to that guy? You know, like, I think it was Jarius Wright, the guy that made all them funky catches for the Vikings. You know, he's on the Panthers now, and he's like the fourth receiver. They cut him because he made too much money. I think it was this year that the Vikings cut him. But, you know, there's guys like that, and Josh Gordon was one of those guys. And I always am intrigued by guys who come out in the supplemental draft because they have problems, so now they have to start their career at kind of a disadvantage. There were a couple of corners that came out this year that I'm interested to see what they do. One got hurt, I think, severely and is on injured reserve, and then there's another one that came out from Virginia Tech that plays for the Redskins. I don't remember if he got hurt or not either. But so that's the end of the Josh Gordon topic. My transitions aren't going to be great for a while because I don't really know how to go from topic to topic. I don't have like a normal podcast that I listen to. They would read some advertising, then go to the next topic, and they'd have an intro and music and whatever. I'm not going to have that. I'm just going to stop talking about one thing, and I'm going to start talking about something else. Most of this is going to be sports. I probably should have said that in the beginning, but here we are. This is kind of a dry run anyway, so I don't even know if this is going to go out. But if it does, I hope that you enjoy it. But my focus is going to be on sports. I know that was a long time to talk about one subject. And there's societal issues that I'll touch on. I'm not going to really talk about politics because there's enough guys talking about politics. If you want to go hear about Donald Trump or, you know, Brett Kavanaugh or whatever the hell is going on currently, more power to you. You know, political discourse in this country probably has never been higher than it is now, you know. Just simply the volume of yelling. But I am not going to talk about it very much. I might talk about societal issues like, you know, feminism or the Me Too movement or stuff, but it's not really going to connect to politics. It's going to be more, you know, if it correlates with a certain subject. You know, there was one. I think of that one because there was an issue. There was a subject with Skylar Diggins comparing herself to Harrison Barnes. Skylar Diggins is a point guard. Oh, God, I don't know. She plays for some WNBA team. She was at Notre Dame a few years ago. They made some long runs in the NCAA tournament with the women's Notre Dame. I think that's Tuffet McGraw that coaches that program. And she compared herself to Harrison Barnes, who was a fairly well-regarded high school player, went to North Carolina, got drafted. Oh, I think that was seventh or third. Those are the two numbers in my head. Overall by the Warriors. And then he left the Warriors, took a bunch of money to go to the Mavericks, and then that helped them get Kevin Durant. And now we see where the NBA is. And that's going to be my next topic, actually. But anyway, she tried to compare how she should make $19 million when Harrison Barnes makes $19 million because she's a better player than he is. And that doesn't really have anything to do with the Me Too movement, but in feminism terms, it has to do with the fact that if I was a feminist, I would want her to be quiet because she makes us look stupid as a woman. You know, if I was a woman, I'd be like, you're making us look dumb. It's like I'm a white guy. The Ku Klux Klan running around out there screaming white power and all that shit, that makes us look stupid. Like, shut up. You don't speak for me. And I don't need you speaking up about, you know, my issues supposedly when you're saying dumb stuff like that. And I kind of see her doing that as a similar thing because, you know, she's discrediting the movement because she's saying something completely ridiculous. A league that makes $6 billion a year pays a mid-level guy, he's maybe a little bit better than mid-level, but he's not great, $19 million. Well, he was a free agent and people believed in his potential. She makes a high end of whatever WNBA players make in a league that maybe makes $600 million a year. Maybe. I don't even know. I was going to look up the details, but I know they don't make much money. Nobody goes to those games. Nobody cares about the WNBA. People care more about high school basketball, girls, than they do about the WNBA. And she's like, oh, well, you know, girls go to Russia and they make 3 times more money. Then go play over there. Don't play in the WNBA more. Just go over there. If the league folded up, it's not a big deal. I mean, is it equitable? Is it fair play? Well, no. But if you're going to start complaining that you're actually getting paid to play basketball and you think, well, the NBA players get paid more people watch it. It's how business works. And intelligent, measured people understand these things. And when you are in a movement or you're in a class and you talk about an issue, because the wage gap is a huge issue for women in the feminist movement and stuff like that. Like, they are really insistent about that. And there are some things to say that I kept hearing on Joe Rogan's podcast about how men take more dangerous jobs and stuff like that, and there are reasons for the wage gap, whether you believe them or not. But that study is out there, and she just kind of just is like, well, he makes $19 million. I'm as good as him. Why don't I make $19 million? Well, no one's going to pay $19 million to watch you play basketball. That's just the way of the world. It's not sexist. It's not, racist. It's not homophobic, because there are a lot of lesbian basketball players. It's none of those things. It's just the fact that no one's interested. It's not interesting. I don't know why. I can't tell you. Elena Deladon's a good basketball player. She could have played at Connecticut. Brianna Stewart played at Connecticut. The women's basketball program in UConn is legendary. People talk about it all the time. People are constantly asking Gino Auriemma why he did, the coach of UConn women's, why he never coached men's. He could have a lot of success. All this stuff. But they're interested in college. They're interested even in high school, even around here in Wisconsin. We have the high school tournaments on at the bars, and guys are screaming their heads off, you gotta play, But no one cares about WNBA. I do not know why. I don't understand why it doesn't transfer, but it just doesn't. And for her not to understand, she went to Notre Dame. That's a good school. They aren't as competitive as some football teams at certain points, because their academic standards are a hell of a lot higher than a lot of football teams. Their basketball standards are the same thing. It's hard to get guys in there. They have to pass a higher bar than a lot of colleges. And for her to get in there and not understand simply that the economics of a business, that if you make X amount of money, you can only pay X amount of money, so you'll make money so the league still runs. Like, would Skylar Diggins like to make $19 million when everybody else makes $5,000 a year and she's the best player in the WNBA? Because I hate to break it to her, but she's not the best player. Elena Deladon is, or Brianna Stewart's probably better than her. Now, granted, they're both bigger. I think Elena Deladon, I don't even know how tall she is. She's up, mid-6 something. And I'm pretty sure Brianna Stewart's 6'5". I'm not sure. I don't even know, but I just know, girls like her. Sue Bird is a bigger name. She's been around. Deanna Taurasi's a huge name. They're older. They're not as prolific as they used to be. Brittany Griner, who played at Baylor, she played at Baylor. She was the biggest news. She was 6'8". She dunked in Baylor. She was big news. Goes to the Phoenix Mercury or whatever the hell they are with Deanna Taurasi, and you never hear about her again. I think she was in a domestic violence incident, and that I heard about, but what she does in basketball, you never hear about that. So those are the kind of societal topics I would touch on. They'll have a large sports contingent, but they will talk about societal topics. That one was kind of just, something, and it's fairly old. I think it was over a month ago, but we've been planning, my sound mixer and I have been planning the inaugural podcast for a while. It's taken me a while to get it out. My officially second topic, is Jimmy Butler. For those of you who don't know, Jimmy Butler was a shooting guard, small forward in today's NBA. He went to Marquette University, which is down in the south of Wisconsin. Private school, very good school. Dwayne Wade, if you know about basketball, you know who Dwayne Wade is. He went there. And he was drafted by the Bulls, Chicago. He played in Chicago for many years under Tom Thibodeau. Thibodeau got fired. They brought in Fred Hoiberg. They brought in Dwayne Wade. And they brought in Rajon Rondo after that. That was when after Derrick Rose blew out his knee 3 times, and he wasn't the MVP Derrick Rose in 2008 anymore. And then this last year, before this last season, he got traded to the Timberwolves in Minnesota. The guy hasn't left, 3 surrounding states. And he went to Minnesota because Tom Thibodeau reemerged in Minnesota with the Timberwolves. And Tom Thibodeau likes his guys. He's really, he brought in Taj Gibson, who was on those teams in, the 2009, early 2010, 11. I don't remember when they broke up that team. It was quite later than it should have been. They held on to Derrick Rose for a long time, even though he just couldn't do it anymore. And he's even was in Minnesota last year. Luol Deng was on those teams. He went from getting a $72 million contract with the Lakers to getting waived and bought out after 1 year when he didn't play. And now he's in Minnesota. I keep wanting to say Minnesota for like a minimum, veterans minimum. But he's trying to get the band back together. That's not the point. Point is Jimmy Butler's there. Now Jimmy Butler is demanding a trade, and he wants initially to go to the Clippers. He wanted to go to Brooklyn, and he wanted to go to the Knicks. And now there is talk like the Wizards are involved, the Bucks are involved, the Heat are involved, the Cavs are involved, the Rockets are involved, the Trailblazers are involved. And I'm just looking at this, and I'm like, what in the hell would you want him for? He's not that good, and he's seemingly a locker room problem. Now, you'll say to me, okay, how the hell do you know this? Well, if we look at the evidence, Jimmy Butler was on the team with Dwayne Wade and Rajon Rondo with the Bulls. I think that was 2015? 16. I think it was 2016, because last year Wade went to the Cavs, and that was after he got bought out from the Bulls, and I think he was only with the Bulls for 1 year. He went to the Bulls, and that was Dwayne Wade's homecoming because Dwayne Wade's from Chicago, and they played together. Now, I don't think he fought with Dwayne Wade, but they had some younger players on there who apparently nobody got along with because they all brawled. Like there was dysfunction. I mean, there were a lot of reports. You can go back and look. There were a lot of reports about dysfunction in the Bulls locker room, dysfunction in the Bulls locker room, dysfunction in the Bulls locker room. Well, Jimmy Butler was at the center of that, right? So now he goes up to Minnesota, and all last year there was talks about there's dysfunction in the Minnesota locker room. What's wrong with Minnesota? Andrew Wiggins, he ain't getting along. Karl Anthony Towns isn't playing. He became an all-star in I think a third-team All-NBA, but he's not happy, and he may not resign and all this stuff. And it's like, what is going on? He loved Kevin Garnett, and Kevin Garnett loved the Timberwolves, but then he had a problem with the owner because Flip Saunders died, and he wasn't happy with the way that was handled. At least that was the reporting that I saw. And he decided that, and so I read this tweet that said, it's after a game last year, Karl Anthony Towns was in the, Karl Anthony Towns, for those of you who don't know, I suppose I should elaborate for people. I'm assuming if you know sports, you know these people, but my cousin, and people that told me I should do a podcast advised me to elaborate because I know a lot and some people might not know who I'm talking about. So Karl Anthony Towns is a 6'11 guy, played at Kentucky. I don't think he was on a championship team, but he's like the future of the NBA. He's a big man who shoots threes, but he can play in the post a little bit. He's a really good player. I mean, he's really good. And Andrew Wiggins was traded for Kevin Love when LeBron came back to the Cavs. It was between him and Jabari Parker that year. He was 6'8". He came from Canada, played at Kansas. He was a pretty good player. He hasn't come to be what everybody thought he would be, but he's a good player. And anyway, so after a game last year, Karl Anthony Towns is in the tunnel, and he smacks his hand on the wall, and somebody said, "Come on, cat, quit being a pussy." And that was Jimmy Butler. Now, if a guy smacks his hand on the wall and he's upset and your reaction is to yell at him and tell him to knock it off, why? I mean, he's not allowed to express his emotions. Now, you can say whatever you want about that. It may not be a big deal, but apparently it was a big deal to Karl Anthony Towns because now that there's talk of Jimmy Butler being traded, Karl Anthony Towns signed a 5-year, $190 million extension. Now, if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. And there's also some reporting. Now, this is maybe a little irresponsible of me to say because he put the laughing, crying face emojis out on Twitter with fake news. But supposedly, Karl Anthony Towns' girlfriend slept with Jimmy Butler, and that's why those two broke up. I have no idea if that's true. It was on TMZ. He laughed about it, said it was fake news. But that's out there as a report. Correct? Incorrect? I don't know. But nowadays, most things that come out are fairly... There's at least a shred of truth because people got sued. So they don't really report things that are complete fabrications anymore. So they had... So they have now Karl Anthony Towns under contract for 5 years, and now they want to trade Jimmy Butler. Fine, trade him. But the problem I'm seeing is why the hell would you want him? Like the Bucks. I'm a Bucks fan. Don't get Jimmy Butler. I mean, he's okay, but he's a dick. And I remember Jimmy Butler when he came in the league, you couldn't get him to talk. He was quiet, he was demure, he was all of these things. And as he's gotten older, I mean, he's 29. He's been in the league a long time. He's now probably, he's a vested veteran, as they say in certain financial fields for the players. He's a vested veteran, so he thinks he can say stuff, and he's got, he's yelling at everybody regardless of who you are, and he's keeping people in check. Tom Thibodeau probably likes it. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't want to play with that guy. I mean, maybe I'd like playing with him. We'd probably be the same kind of guy. I'd probably be that guy on the team too. But if you have a team that has a pretty good chemistry and you bring in this guy who's going to just act however he wants, he's not going to adapt to your chemistry. It's like they talk about systems, like the Heat. That was the number one suitor. That was the last thing I read, was that the number one suitor is the Miami Heat. Really? You don't have enough malcontents at the current moment? You have Hassan Whiteside, who got a bunch of money and acts like an ass now. You have Dion Waiters, who got surgery supposedly against Miami doctor advice, the Heat's advice, and now he's fat as hell again. Like, he got in shape 1 year right before he cut his contract, and then that was it. He's out. I'm done. Goodbye. And, when I was a younger kid, it was confusing to me because I didn't used to understand that why guys just would get the contract and give up. But as I've gotten older, you get to understand that, how much money do you need, So he got $48 million or whatever it was. I'm done now. I don't have to work out that hard. I hate working out myself, and I only, I work out at the gym. I don't have to go twice a day and shoot arounds and, all this other shit that those guys do. I mean, because they're professional athletes. Their body is their instrument, so they got to keep working at it, And I loved basketball as myself. I love basketball, but I don't practice anything like they practice. I mean, shoot me in the face. I can't do that, Good God, that takes forever. Oh, coach, got to shoot this many threes and do this many of this, and it's like, I'll do like 12 and then I'm going in the house, that kind of deal. That was me. So I never had the drive to be an athlete, and I wasn't really good at team sports. I'm more of an individualist, like this podcast. A lot of podcasts have co-hosts and guests and stuff. I'm assuming that I'm never going to have a co-host, and if we have guests, it's going to be a long time before it happens. Whether I keep doing this or not is also a question, but, maybe some people will listen to this, maybe you won't. But anyway, Jimmy Butler is not that good a player. And if you can get him for nothing, that's great. Because he's also a rental. He has 1 year left on his deal, and I think the other one's a player option. So he can walk away. Well, then what do I want him for? He's a malcontent. He might cause locker room trouble. And I don't have any guarantee that he's going to stay here so we can work it out. Like, that's why they're trying to work it out with Dion Waiters and Hassan Whiteside in Miami. Because we just gave these guys, like, I think 4 and 5 year contracts, and we gave Hassan, like, max player money, and Dion got a lot of money, so we have to make these guys players. We have to try to work with them. They are our partners. But this guy, he's gone in 1 year, and on his own choice. So if it was me, I would not waste assets on Jimmy Butler. And I really question as to why. I mean, I see why he's valuable. He has value on the court, but everything else that goes into being a basketball player, he seems to cause disruption, or disruption follows him wherever he goes. Now, that might be a coincidence. I don't believe so. I really, truly think that it's too much of a coincidence that it happened twice, not just once. But that is what it is. So, if Jimmy Butler leaves or not, that'll be a question. Tom Thibodeau thinks he's not going to. But there is one guy who made a transition this year, and that was Jon Gruden. Old Chucky. I was a really big Jon Gruden fan when I was a kid. I remember the Tuck Rule game. I was watching it at my dad's house. I was waiting for my mom to pick me up. My dad worked third shift, so I was sitting there. He was sleeping in the bedroom, and I'm watching the football game. And I hate the Patriots, and I like the Raiders with Greg Beaker and Rich Gannon and Jerry Rice and Tim Brown and all the friggin' senior citizen, squad. And they're just just churning away, And I remember I loved that team. But a lot of time has passed. Jon Gruden last coached 10 years ago. Okay, a lot of time has passed. Jon Gruden's not the same man he was 10 years ago. I don't think he's as driven. I don't even think the last year or two he was in Tampa he was that driven. I think he needed a break. And he got, making an offer at a cat buffoos kind of deal, And Mark Davis is obviously in love with the guy. I mean, if you look at that haircut that Mark Davis gets, it's because he's trying to model his hair after Jon Gruden. It's just not a very good model. Like, they should just go to the same barber and just, like, Jon sits in the chair and they cut his hair, and then Mark sits down right after him and goes, "Hey, I want that. What you just did, do that to me. Thank you." But apparently he drives some ridiculous amount of way to go get his hair cut by one guy. I don't know. I heard that story on, I think that was Dan Levitard's show. But anyway. So Jon Gruden inflicts his terrible analysis because I thought truly him on Monday Night Football, like John Madden was, in the early days, he was insightful and then became a character towards the end. And, you get older, you rest on your laurels, you don't have anything new to say, Everything's been done under the sun kind of idea, except for the fact that that's just your perception, because you're not allowing new things into your life. You're not trying new things. You're just doing the same thing every day. And so you're just seeing the same stuff all the time. You don't have new things to say because you're not experiencing new. Sorry, I'm yawning. So you're not experiencing the newness, so you don't really have anything new to say. And so Jon Gruden was a new voice, but except he was a character right away, like a caricature of himself. And I hate people like that, because it's like, if you can't be honest initially, once you're on TV for a long time, you're going to be such a joke. It's not even funny. So by the time he left, it was like, please, for the love of God, take him off of there. He's terrible. People liked him or people hate him. I mean, people complain about Joe Buck and Troy Aikman all the time. I'm not enamored with Troy Aikman all the time. I think Joe Buck is a far better play-by-play guy than anybody ESPN. I mean, Mike Tirico wasn't bad. I like Mike Tirico. I like Al Michaels. I don't think that guy that they had with Jon Gruden after Tirico left was very good. I didn't watch the new game, so I don't know about Joe Tessitore. I miss the days like Brent Musburger. I really liked him. Some of the older guys I really enjoy. Like, I saw a game, I don't remember when that was or what that was about. I think it was on that 30 for 30, two Bills, from the Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells documentary. And there was old footage from some game in the 90s when Marv Albert was actually doing football. And I had heard he had done football, but I'd never seen him on a highlight or anything. He actually wasn't bad. I mean, he's okay on basketball, too. I like him. I like the old guys better. And for me, if you're going to put somebody out there, they should be good. And Jon Gruden just wasn't good. And his quarterback show was kind of biased. Like, guys he liked, he was nice to, and guys he didn't like, he was kind of a dick to. And I didn't like his personality. Like, it seemed like TV fed into all the bad parts of him, and kind of like as he grew in TV, those things grew larger, and the more demure, less bombastic, arrogant personality parts of him just metastasized through his whole body, and that was his personality. And I was like, this is disgusting. So now you see him with the Raiders. And the Raiders aren't a bad football team. I mean, they really aren't. They have Derek Carr, Amari Cooper. They had Khalil Mack until he got rid of him. They had other people, I mean, they have... They're fairly good, They're not bad. And the fact that he got rid of so many people is rather appalling, because there are, there are quality football players he let walk out the door, but he's not interested in quality football players. He's interested in players that he likes. And I was listening to, I think, Tony Kornheiser's podcast, and he had Jason Lockenfora on there, and they were talking about how, like, he said, well, he's a young guy. Well, on that roster, he's a young guy. And their roster age is like 27-something average. You know, it's one of the oldest rosters in league history, in recent league history. And I'm like, well, thank you very much. I'm 28 going on 29, and 27's ancient. You know, it's like, oh, my God. But that's beside the point. The point is that now this report comes out yesterday that he's not listening to Reggie McKenzie anymore. And for those of you who don't know, Reggie McKenzie was also another guy underneath Ted Thompson when the Packers were really successful. I mean, you can see why the Packers were successful, because John Snyder worked there, who built the Seahawks. John Dorsey worked there, who built the Chiefs. Reggie McKenzie worked there, who built the Raiders. And there was one other guy, and I can't remember who it is, but he went on to be a general manager somewhere too, and he's had success, but I can't think of who it is offhand. But the point being is that those guys were underneath Ted Thompson, and you see why they made good decisions. I mean, these guys knew what they were doing. And Reggie McKenzie, I mean, he's not bad at his job. The team may not be that great, but he's not bad at his job. He got Derek Carr. He drafted Khalil Mack. Now this will be fun for you to edit out. He drafted Khalil Mack. He did a lot of good things. You know, Khalil Mack was seen to be a high first round draft pick. Well, not high. I guess he was talked about a lot. I had heard his name a bunch when the NFL had their initial their pre-draft bullshit that year. And he was from Buffalo, and nobody really knew much about him, but he came to Combine and did all these things. And now he's one of the best pass rushers in the league. I mean, he's a really good player. He just got paid all that money, you know. I mean, obviously he's valued. And there's other guys he found, you know. He took some chances. DJ Hayden would be one that didn't work out. And, you know, Sean Smith, the guy that was the corner from the Chiefs, who was in prison briefly and now isn't on the team anymore, you know. But since he's been there, since Jon Gruden's been there, they traded for Martavis Bryant for a third-round pick, cut him, and then re-signed him for exactly the same salary. That doesn't make sense. They signed Jordy Nelson, who, as a Packer fan, you would think, oh, well, you're going to like him, right? And he's okay. I mean, I've never been a huge Jordy Nelson fan. I think him being a white guy who could run and play receiver, a lot of praise was heaped on him, especially here because it's like low-profile racism. And I'm not saying people who liked him were racist. I'm just saying it's like, oh, look, the white guy, he can run, yay! You know, and they all get on the bandwagon. It happened when I was a younger kid with a guy named Bill Schrader. He was the worst. I hated that guy beyond belief. I remember one time I was watching a game. I don't remember who they were playing. I don't remember the details, but I just remember I was really young. And I remember watching him try to catch the ball. He jumped into the middle of the end zone. He was by the field goal post. And he jumped to catch the ball from Favre. And his hands were right in front of his face. I'm doing it now for those of you because you can't see me. But his hands were right in front of his face. And the ball somehow went through his hands and hit him in the face and fell on the ground. And that is my everlasting image of Bill Schrader's football career. I thought he stunk. I have never looked up his stats. I have no interest in him. I think he stinks. Devontae Adams, when the Packers first got him, I thought he was like that. But, you know, the Raiders signed Jordy Nelson, and they get Doug Martin, and they get guys with pseudo names who were really good at one point, but they've tailed off, you know. And granted, if you listen to this podcast, you know, after the game that Jordy Nelson just had this last Sunday, you're going to be like, you're an idiot. But, you know, he's a good player. I'm not saying he's not. I just think the amount of fervor around Jordy had something to do with the fact that he was white and he played receiver, and that seems to sell in certain areas. So he's made some interesting decisions. And now there was this report that this guy who called Von Miller a bust and said Jake Locker was the number one quarterback in the league is in their general man. It is in their scouting department. And that's the guy that Gruden listens to. Now, this is according to CBS Sports. I read this last night on there. And he he supposedly listens to that guy. And people that are in his circle are given more credence to those who aren't. And Reggie McKenzie isn't in it, supposedly. I don't know. I'm not there. This is all stuff that I'm reading. But it makes me upset because the product on the field isn't very good. There's constant turmoil in the front office and that kind of stuff. It just seems like a team that's failing all the way around. And they've been flailing for a long time. It seems like they got stable once they got Derek Carr. They had Jack Del Rio. They had Reggie McKenzie. They seem stable, right? The years of Jamarcus Russell and, good God, Randy Moss and all that crap that happened in the early to late 2000s, that's not there anymore. They're not trotting out. Oh God, what the bunch of quarterbacks they went through. I mean, it was tough to watch for a while. If you were a Raiders fan. And when I was a little kid, I was a Raiders fan. I liked the Raiders, So they always hold a little special place in my heart, And I want them to do well. Go to Vegas, make money, Don't deal with Sheldon Adelson. But the point is that's the team, that was constructed by general manager Reggie McKenzie with the help of Jack Del Rio, I'm assured. But Jon Gruden comes in, he's like, no, I'm the big man on campus. I'm getting $100 million, supposedly. I'm going to do what I want. And he's just like swinging himself around. But if you look at Jon Gruden, I don't really think he's a great talent evaluator. His quarterback room, he liked quarterbacks who stink. But he might turn it around. I don't know. I just wish that, like I said to you, the parts of his personality that metastasized and seemingly grew on TV would be the parts that would make him disregard other people's opinions and just listen to himself and get yes men and people who think ridiculous things like he does in his room and say, yeah, man, that's a good idea. Do that. Yeah. I mean, what? How do you grow? How do you get any better? It's a lot of like the discrepancy between the two sides of the same coin that we're having in the country now, where everybody's yelling at each other. You're either over here or you're over there, and whether it be Republican or Democrat or, any issue, if you're on one of two sides, you're screaming across the middle at the other side and pointing your finger and just being like, bah, you suck, I hate you, change your ways, do it different, bah. And it's like, how the hell are you going to change anybody's mind like that? I know you wouldn't change my mind. I'd scream right back at you, give you the finger, tell you to go fuck yourself, and how dare you talk to me? I mean, that kind of energy elicits that kind of energy, you know what I mean? And a smarter way, like, you learn your opponent. Like, the best way to beat your opponent is to learn your opponent. Know what they're going to do before they do it, and get inside there, dig around, and rip it out. I was thinking about this last night, and you can make it like, I'm a guy who fixes things. So it's important to me to understand how they're broken when they're initially broken. But what you can do is when you learn how to fix things, you can also learn how to irreparably break it. So if you truly want to destroy your opponent, like if you're on one side or the other and you truly want to destroy your opponent, get in there. Let them open up to you. Let them talk to you, and then figure out what's in there that you can. If you pull that out, that's it. They're done. They ain't coming back again. Because this is their one shot, and they're done after that. And I mean, that's a sick, fucked up way to think about things. But that is ultimately, if your singular goal isn't to move the discussion forward or to come to a happy medium, if you want to win, that's how you win. But people are too lazy or stupid or inept to do that, so they just stand across from each other and scream and fight and do just insane, reckless, immature things. If I had my way, we'd find common ground. I was listening to Bill Burr's podcast. It's a really old one. It's from 3 would be March. The 1st of March with Kenny Aronoff. He's a drummer for some band. I don't know. He's outside my frame of reference, and I didn't listen to the whole thing. I listened to the very beginning, and in the very beginning, Kenny Aronoff was talking about how his dad was a World War II pilot, and he bombed Hitler. But his dad would listen to Hitler. Like, he was the definition of a liberal. He would listen to Hitler and then tell him he was wrong and try to find a common ground and that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying liberal or Democrat or whatever. I'm just saying those are the kind of people that we need more of, like, that sit there and have discussion and that kind of thing, instead of just doing this thing that I keep hearing about called the silo effect, where you just kind of surround yourself with things that reinforce how you feel about the world, and then you're just like, yeah, everything sucks, and then everything you read is like, yeah, everything sucks, and everything you watch on TV is, yeah, everything sucks, and everything you listen to is, yeah, everything sucks, and it's like, well, you're not going to think the world doesn't suck because you seek out stuff that tells you it sucks. I mean, it's just, this is all common sense, people. Like, it's not difficult to understand. And in that way, like, that's how I see the world. And that I see Jon Gruden as like the red-faced, aging Chucky doll example of it in football, because he seems like somebody who would exactly put people around him who would say, oh, yes, 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 it wouldn't even be John, it'd be, yes, Mr. Gruden, you're so smart. You're so smart. Yes, let's get rid of him. He's terrible. Oh, I don't care how much money he makes. We'll eat the dead money. He's terrible. Oh, that guy that we picked 15th overall, who people thought would maybe be at the end of the first round, he's very good. Yes, we're going to start him at left tackle and kick the guy out that has been our left tackle for a long time. Was your left tackle, I think. I know he played for the Bucs. I don't know if he was there when Jon Gruden was there the last year, but that's beside the point. The point is that he just has some sycophants around him that tell him what he wants to hear, and to me, that's the stupidest way to live your life, because at the end of the day, what the hell? Who cares? Like, if you're wrong, you're wrong. He's the head coach. If he at the end of the day, if he hears people that say, hey man, you shouldn't do that, this is why, and this is what you should do, he can still make a different decision. Is he that weak-minded that he can't? I don't know. That would be something to ask him. You know, do you have to have... That would be something to ask people who have yes men around them. It's like, are you that weak-minded that you have to have yes people around you because you can't deal with outside opinions? Because, A, you can't disagree with them in a civil way to make them understand your point, or you don't understand your point. I think that's a lot of what goes on now, because a lot of people like to use fancy words and high education kind of stuff, but they're really not educated and they don't know what they're talking about, and they just talk shit. And then if you press them on it, like if you actually know what they're talking about and you're like, okay, so what is this then? And they're like, something. And it's like, okay, that's not really an answer. Something else. It's like, okay, you have no clue what you're talking about, do you? But you're just sitting there trying to act all fucking big and mighty because you went to some 4-year college and got some stupid degree. And you went to college because your guidance counselor told you you have to go to college, and you didn't think for yourself. And you have refused to think for yourself ever since. I just think a lot of people, you know, everybody wants things done for them. And that just seems like what he wants. You know, he just wants everybody to agree with him and let him do what he wants. And let's, you know, just point me in the direction. I'll go, man, you know. I don't know. I'm very disappointed because I was excited for Jon Gruden to come back, and the fact that they're that terrible and supposedly he's causing that much trouble really is disappointing and kind of makes me sad on an entirely unrelated level. I wanted to touch quickly on my next subject because as much as Jon Gruden is going to be in Vegas, the UFC is in Vegas most of the time. And there's this talk about this guy. I have no idea who this guy is. His name's Logan Paul. He's a YouTube guy. I saw him on a Netflix movie because I saw his face because he boxed some KSI guy, like, I don't know, a month ago or however long ago that was. And this Logan Paul guy's been in trouble because he, I don't know, disrespected something, was in some suicide forest, killed something. I don't know. He's just... what people consider like interesting today makes my head hurt. But anyway, that's a different podcast topic for a different day. The UFC has been talking about him. Well, he's been talked about in UFC circles since he boxed this KSI guy. And I have no idea why, because they wore headgear and they were in shape. But according to what I heard, there wasn't a lot of power punching going on. So Dana White came out and said, if I ever let Logan Paul fight in the UFC, I should be arrested. And I'm laughing to say that because this is the same Dana White who said Ronda Rousey would never be in the UFC. And Logan Paul actually had a good point where he's like, you let CM Punk in the UFC, which I like CM Punk. Like, if you listen to Mark Maron's podcast or even Cole Cabana's podcast, which now they're suing each other. Well, Cole Cabana is suing CM Punk because they went through a long, lengthy court battle, and I think he says that Punk said he would handle the tab, and then Punk's like, we'll do it 50-50. You handle your end, I'll take care of mine. And Cole Cabana's like, I don't have that kind of money. What are you talking about? So the funny part is, to me, is that Dana White, like, he's kind of ridiculous. Like, I like him. He can be affable and interesting, and like, probably if you looked at the commissioners of leagues, and he's trying to present the UFC as a league like that, but he's not, and it's not. It's a fight promotion, and it's simply that. And somehow it sold for $4 billion, which I will never understand in the history of my life, but that's what happened. And excuse me, I'm yawning. He just goes where the money is. Like, that's what he does. That's why it's worth $4 billion, because they make money, usually. And they need stars. So they're going to pick this blonde-haired dipshit and put him in the UFC ring. And I don't know what he weighs. I forget what class he fought at with that KSI guy. But if he fights at, like, 170, I would love to see him being there with Tyrone Woodley or fucking, I don't even know, Robbie Lawler. That would be a great first fight. Logan Paul versus Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler just decimates his face with a right hand, and like all of his bones are broken, and he's like, I'm gonna go back to YouTube. Because I just, like, those guys, I don't understand why kids, like, we're so lazy now as kids. Like, kids are so lazy now that, and even not kids, you know, like adult kids, they're so lazy that they can't play video games. They have to watch other people play them and then comment on them. What? Like, if you're with your friend and your friend's playing a new game that he's got, and you're like, all right, dude, I'm just going to sit, chill, you know, play on my phone, and I'll watch you play. And he's like, yeah, look at what I did here. Like, my one friend, I go to his house sometimes, and, like, recently he had the Ark video game. And he's like, yeah, man, this game's cool. I got this weird thing, and I built this house, and this happened, and whatever. And he's running all over the place showing me. And he's like, I've never seen this thing before. And I'm like, what's that over there? And he's like, oh, you showed me that. And I'm like, yeah, well, I pay more attention than you do, you know. But that's what you do. Why would you waste, like, I live in the middle of nowhere, so I have to do internet with, like, gigabytes, you know. And how the hell, what? I'm supposed to do gigabytes with, I'm supposed to use my gigabytes of my internet to watch some jackass play video games? I have video games. I'd like to play online. I can't because I have shitty internet, you know? So the fact that this guy is now possibly talked, not by anybody in the UFC, but by the community in and of itself. Like, UFC fighters were like, oh, I'll fight. I think it was Sage Northcutt, who I don't like either. And he's like, yeah, I'll fight Logan Paul. It's like, you just want an easy payday, like a large one, because a lot of people come watch Logan Paul because he brings a big audience with him. But it's like, he's going to get his ass kicked. What the hell are you guys? I don't know. But I also think it's funny that Dana White says he's never going to fight in the UFC. He should be arrested. Well, Dana White, at some point, you're probably going to get arrested, because if somebody comes to you and says, we can put on this promotion with this amount of money, and it's substantial enough, Dana White likes money. You should see that pictures of his kids' birthday parties. Jesus Christ. He went a little above and beyond. And finally, as much as I struggle with understanding the YouTube sensations, I'm also struggling to understand what the hell the Packers are doing. Now, I'm a Wisconsin kid. I've liked the Packers for a very long time. I'm not usually a team guy. I'm more of a player guy. Like, I like the Cavs when LeBron's on them. I like the Heat when LeBron's on them. I sort of pay attention to him when he's not there, you know, when guys leave teams that I've liked. But I like teams. I like players, though, usually. Like, I like the teams that have my favorite players on them, and then I like teams without. Like, I like the Packers because I like Aaron Rodgers. I like quite a few of their players, but I like the Packers because I just like the Packers. That's the one that kind of sticks with me. And, however, I liked Adrian Peterson. Now, he played for the Vikings for a very long time, and then last year he played for the Saints and the Cardinals, and then he played for the Redskins this week. And again, he played against the Packers. But more editing because people come in and make noise. And I like Adrian Peterson. I always have his running style, everything like that. So when they played the Redskins yesterday, I wasn't really too surprised that they relied heavily on him because he was a Vikings player and he played against the Packers for a really long time. Now, granted, he played against a different defense and he competed against a lot of different guys. I mean, that defense has gone through some changes in the last couple of years. I mean, Capers left this offseason and then they've had some roster turnover. However, House and Williams are back and that kind of stuff. But to be honest, I don't know what the hell they're doing on defense because they drafted 2 corners and they signed them 2 guys from before, and everybody was holding. I mean, granted, the weather was pretty crappy in Washington. I get a little bit of an early report on that because I'm with I listen to Tony Kornheiser's podcast. And for people who don't know who Tony Kornheiser is, he is the other host of Pardon the Interruption on ESPN. He used to write for the Washington Post and numerous amounts of other places. He was pretty good at that job, and he now lives in Washington D.C. because that's where his last newspaper job was from, and then it also was where they host and tape BTI from. So anyway, he talks about the weather a lot on his podcast, and they've been saying it's been raining constantly there. Well, they said, oh, the rain won't affect the game. Well, it was wetter than hell. There were a lot of drops. I mean, the offense looked stagnant at points. Aaron Jones looked really good. I was really glad that Aaron Jones came back. I like Aaron Jones a lot. I think he's he reminds me kind of Amon Green. That's how I feel like he runs, a little more aggressive, not as shifty, but he just reminds, I remember when I was younger and I used to watch Amon Green, and that is definitely who he reminds me of. Jamal Williams is better at catching, and Ty Montgomery, I know he wants to play running back, but God, I think he should go back to receiver. I don't see the point of keeping him at running back because he doesn't really play very well at running back. But the defense overall looked pretty bad, and the Redskins' offense is far from prolific. I mean, who do they have as receivers? Josh Doxson? Paul Richardson? I mean, I don't know who that is, but, I mean, I know who they are, but I mean, they don't have any receivers. They used to have Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon, and Pierre Garçon's not really doing anything now, but, Deshaun Jackson looks like a world beater with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So, I mean, you imagine if he had Alex Smith in that offense, they'd probably be pretty good, but I don't know. And I think, Adrian Peterson rescued their rushing attack. I mean, he didn't have a whole hell of a lot of yards, but he scored touchdowns. He was hard to tackle. He broke some tackles. I mean, he looked like what you would expect a 33-year-old Adrian Peterson with all those injuries to look like, but he still looks better than some running backs when they're in their 20s. So I think for all the talk of how he was terrible and washed up and all that stuff, at the beginning of the year, I still think the Packers should have picked him up. I think they should I thought they should have moved Montgomery back to wide receiver and picked up Peterson. And I think a year with him and those 2 young guys, Williams, Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, that would have been great for those guys to learn under him. I mean, not so much like he's going to teach them how to run, but just how to work out. I mean, he's been doing he's got massive workouts. He's been a fitness freak his entire career. I mean, and to come back from blown Achilles and the ACL tears that he's had and everything else to be a running back who's effective at 33, I think that's pretty impressive. But anyway, so the Packers, what can you say? They're struggling. Rodgers hurts his knee. On the first series, he went out of the pocket and bounced around, and then after the play, he was literally limping back to the huddle, grimacing, really visibly, like he couldn't even hide it. And to me, that shows that he's really messed up. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if after the year we come to find out that he's torn his ACL or his MCL or some LCL or something in his knee, and he has to actually have surgery. But it's interesting to see that he's out there, even after signing that big deal and everything else. It just shows to him that football's important. I do think that eventually the offense will get better. I just godforsaken hope that damn Deshaun Kaiser, the backup quarterback, does not come in, because if he does, the Packers are beyond screwed. I mean, he was an absolute disaster with the Browns last year. I mean, he was okay in certain spots, but he reminds me a lot of when Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is the Bucks like franchise star player, first started playing basketball. He would do things that were amazing, and then he would do things that were the most boneheaded thing. Now, granted, that was in basketball, so he had a lot of shots and a lot of chances. But but in football, Kaiser does stuff that just is. I mean, like you watched him play against the Bears when Rodgers got hurt in the first game. He literally decided to take the ball and run into Khalil Mack and then give him the damn ball. I mean, how much more stupid can you get? His pocket awareness is terrible, and his just general awareness, like who's open, who's not, that kind of stuff, is just piss poor beyond belief. But I think, like I said, I think Rodgers has gotten it out. I think they're doing the best they can. They did the best they could in the rain. I think, if it wouldn't have been raining and they'd made a couple catches that they didn't, that weren't made, because I'm pretty sure it was the rain, because the guys had their hands on it. Now, Davante's good for some drops, but Cobb usually is pretty sure-handed, and if it hits him in the hands like it did a couple of times and he dropped it, he would have caught it. So there's not a lot of worry. Granted, it's only 3 games in and that kind of stuff, so they're 1-1-1. But I don't know. And if I hear Clay Matthews complain anymore, I'm going to throw up, because anybody who's a Packers fan should complain about the fact that they had to pay Clay Matthews all the money they have the last 2 or 3 years, and he's ostensibly done nothing. I mean, for the money he makes, like J.J. Watt's the same way, and I know that I'm blaspheming against Wisconsin guys, but J.J. Watt, now granted, he's had massive injuries. I mean, massive injuries, so he has at least an excuse. But Clay Matthews has been relatively healthy, and he just hasn't produced. Now, they run into the same problem that they ran into a few years ago before they got Peppers, where he's the only pass rusher, period. And so they just bulk up on that side, and he can't get through. And Perry's good in pass rushing sense, but he's a typical USC guy who has a lot of talent, never stays healthy, or just never realizes it. And everybody's like, oh, I read things about Perry, about how he's the most talented pass rusher on the team and all this other stuff. And they gave him the money and all that other, all that other crap. And it's like, yeah, but he's not put it together yet, as far as I'm concerned. So, and I feel bad for Muhammad Wilkerson. He's probably done for the year. He had that ankle injury, which didn't really look all that serious, but he must have just popped it off. I don't know what to tell you. I haven't seen anything like that. Anything that would require, and then that they come on TV and start talking about, oh, he's going to the hospital. Like, Jesus Christ, the guy's not dead, for Christ's sake. He's got an ankle injury. It is what it is. I can't pretend like I know exactly what was going on in the locker room, but I tend to believe that was a little bit overblown. Other than that, watching the game, I didn't really see too much. I watched till about. I didn't even watch the whole thing because I went to the gym, and I had a lot to do on Sunday, so I went to the gym, and when I watched the game, I was watching the other games, the 3:00 games at the gym, and I was looking at the scores across the bottom, because I do happen to play fantasy, so I was trying to look for guys on my teams, and then of course the score came across, and I was like, oh shit, I did so good for 4 or 5 hours. I hadn't run into anybody who knew anything. I didn't hear anything on the radio, nothing. I had done real well, and then I saw that, and I was like, God damn it. So I knew the score, so when it got to be about 28-17, and nobody was doing anything, and guys were just kind of running around, and I was like, well, I know the Packers don't score anymore, and they only get a field goal, so I really don't care, because if they scored like 2 touchdowns at the end of the game, that would have been something to talk about. But I already knew what the score was, so I had seen how they got the 2 scores, or the 3. I had seen how they got the yards and stuff, and what the problem was. So I was pretty well informed. So I just turned it off, because I'm not gonna watch them lose. Oh, they get a field goal. I don't really care about the Redskins. Plus, it was such a dreary, it just looked like a dreary game. It was one of those games where it's raining and you can tell it's raining. But yeah, so I generally think we'll see what happens this week. I don't I don't have a whole lot of faith. There was talk that they were going to sign Navarro Bowman as a middle linebacker. I like that Antonio Morrison they got as a middle linebacker from the Colts for that Lindsey Pipkins who they turned out to cut anyway, and so we could get him back if the Packers could get him back if they had to. But it is what it is. They got time yet. It's only 3 games in, so I just hope Rodgers doesn't mess up his knee on a large basis, because if he does, that's going to be a big hit. I mean, that's going to be a really big hit. And there was that one play, I think it was Deron Payne took him down. I took him down right by the legs, because you can't hit the quarterbacks up top. Well, it's like, Christ, his leg already hurts, and now you're taking a 390-pound man and throwing it, you knock my knees together when I'm laying in bed. It's like, ooh, that kind of hurt, knock my knees together with a 390-pound man doing it, and putting all his body weight on half of it. That don't sound so interesting to me. So I'm glad he's tough and gotten it out, but I really hope, at some point, if the Packers are going in, reverse, or sitting there spinning their wheels, 6-6 or something, I say pack it in, we'll be 10-6, the division looks gettable because the Bears, I think, are in first place now, and the Bears aren't very good. I think the Vikings have to turn it on. I don't know what's going on with their defense. Their defense seems weird to me. But there's this whole new thing about playing tough defense. Like, it's literally impossible. And, Clay Matthews wants to complain, oh, the league's getting soft. Well, that might be true, but you've been terrible for other reasons. So I would just, you got a couple. That penalty call, you just knew it was going to happen. And he knew it before he did it, because he's already coming to, well, I didn't do it. Well, you did it right in front of the damn judge. You're screwed, and they threw the flag. And it's like, oh, game's soft. Well, I don't know any older guy. Now, granted, he's not that old, but he's getting towards the end of his career. He's not a young man anymore. He's got 5 more years maybe if he's healthy, and he wants to play because he's got a lot of money already. And those guys, shortly out of the league or 10 years down the road start going, oh, the league's not. But this is a precipitous change in the league now. The last 5-10 years, it's just been rule after rule after rule after rule after rule after rule after rule that come out of the office that are just like, nope, no defense, no hard hitting, no nothing. Now, that has partially to do with concussions. It also has to do with the fact they want to keep the quarterbacks upright because, touchdowns sell, tickets. Okay, well, you can think whatever you want. I like to watch good defensive battles. I've always been one of those guys. That was the thing, we were talking about Jon Gruden earlier, and that was the thing I liked about Jon Gruden the most was that his defenses were pretty good. They had guys you'd heard of, and they blitzed the hell out of the ball. At least that's what I remember. I don't know. I was pretty young, but that's the kind of defense. Like if I play Madden and stuff like that, that's what I do. I just call blitz. Screw this zone. I don't need, cover out. I'd get a bunch of man corners and just blitz the hell out of everybody. That would be my defensive strategy. Probably wouldn't be that successful, but that's what I like to watch. And in a lot of ways, there's merit to not doing that, but I don't really agree. All right, well, I think that's enough for me today. This podcast is probably going to evolve as we go along. I did that little interlude about Skylar Diggins and stuff like that, and I'm going to do my level best to stay away from politics because my viewpoints aren't inflammatory, but they don't really go along with the status quo on either side. So I'm just gonna have, I'm hoping that there's people out there that agree with me, and there seems to be when I have conversations with people. But this is going out on the internet, and I fully expect to get just inundated with negative comments and backlash and all this shit, because nobody can just let things be as they are. They have to either put their personal stamp of approval where they're like, oh my God, he is the, this is the best, or whatever, anything, not just the, me, but anything, and then if it's not good, well, this is the biggest, like Yelp for restaurants, you see these 3-4 page reviews of these restaurants by these people who aren't reviewers. Like, they're not being paid. They're just doing this for free. And it's like, are you auditioning to be a reviewer? Because if I was like a magazine, and who reviews stuff, online stuff, right? Well, if I'm an online company, I'm not going to take you from Yelp. I'm just going to send somebody there, and if you wrote something really good, have them take some of it, and just change the prose. It's just, and they can pay them nothing, where they could pay you nothing for a while, but if you're talented, you're gonna want money. That's how that kind of stuff works. But all in all, I didn't really explain too much when I opened, because I kind of wanted to get into it and get going, because like I said, it's taken me a little while to do this. I've been pretty busy, and my sound mixer has been interested in me putting one out, and so it's it's going to be the way that it is, and I'm going to do my level, like I said, my level best to try to stay away from politics and inflammatory topics as much as I can. But there's going to be some things that I'm going to talk about, like I said, that's going to bring me the the requisite stuff that comes with the internet, and that's where this is going. So I expect to deal with some. I won't deal with it. I mean, in that sense, like I'm not going to engage with you. If you want to try to start a fight with me, or you want to argue about something, I mean, you can. If you'd like to discuss things respectfully, like if I say something, and you say, hey man, I don't agree, and this is why, I mean, that's content. I can use that, and I'm probably going to set up an email for this thing, and you guys who listen can email, and I say you guys, and it kind of makes me laugh, because I kind of feel it presumptuous to think that anybody's going to listen to this. But if you do, and you'd like to get a hold of me, I'll be setting up, Instagram and Twitter and all of the requisite social media platforms, because that's what you do now. And yeah, so I hope that y'all enjoyed this, and the next one will be coming soon.